Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Hub Cymru Africa Wales Africa Health Links Network Conference, Health for All 2020. Thanks for those who've joined in. If you can use the chat box on the right-hand side to say hello if you're in the room. You can type in your name and the organisation and a little bit about what you're hoping to get out of today's session. My name is Kath Molongo. I'm a Development Support Manager for Hub Cymru Africa. With me, I have Gordon Lewis. He's a recently retired GP in Carmarthen and a trustee of the Wales Africa Health Links Network. He's volunteered for the Wales Africa community for over 12 years, and he started by doing VSO in Jamaica when he was 18. For the Health, Education and Improvement Wales, Gordon has spearheaded the Global Health Fellowship Programme, linking young doctors with rural South African hospitals. He leads the healthcare division of Care Uganda, and he's been doing that for the past 10 years. So we're really pleased to have you here with us, and we're going to talk about fundraising today. If anybody wants to say hello, yes, we've got somebody, it is working. Somebody said hello in the chat box. Hi, David, thank you very much. So we're just going to leave it a little bit longer just to make sure that everybody who can get into the room is in the room. Bear with me. I can see that we've got a couple of people, and then Gordon can share the slides to get going. Would you like to say hello, Gordon?
Hello. I'm not sure if there's anybody out there. Well, yes, I can see that there's David is there. And I hope you're okay, David. And I hope that you've actually brought along a glass of wine with you, because I was told that I should bring one myself.
It does say that we've got 14 people now in the room with us.
Okay. Well, you tell me when. Oh, Paul Myers is there.
Yeah.
And Peter
lovely.
Dixon.
Fab. Do you want to share the slide now? Is that okay?
Okay. Let's see if we can do this. The technology isn't great. I don't know if any of you were watching Vaughan Gethin yesterday, but the technology wasn't great when I was listening to him. Okay, Kath.
Thanks, Gordon.
Is that okay?
No, you're not sharing.
I have shared it. Okay. I'm not sharing this application window. Okay, here we go. Is that working now?
Let me try doing that. Yes, there we go. Fab. So if you could make it to present, that would be great. Thank you, Gordon.
Okay.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. So as I was saying, I'm just going to introduce Gordon, but first some housekeeping from the Wales Africa Health Links Network. So this is a webinar format. So only panelists, only myself and Gordon can be seen or heard throughout this webinar. You are all muted, but you can talk in the chat, like a lot of you are introducing yourself on the right hand side of the chat. The chat box is for discussions. If you have any questions, you can see at the bottom, it says ask a question. If you click on that, then you can put a question into there, and your colleagues, you can upvote. So if there's a question that somebody has put that you like, then you can upvote the question. Gordon's going to run through his presentation, and then at the end, we'll look at questions at the end. So put your questions in the ask a question box rather than the chat, because it'll get lost. If you would like to speak at the end, then you can use the put your hand up emoji. So I'm just going to do it now. There's it says say something nice, and then there's a smiley face on the corner. If you click there, you can use an emoji with a hand up. So if you do that, then we will know that you want to talk, and so then we can then invite you in to talk. Otherwise you'll be muted and you won't be able to talk, but you can still ask questions and still do the chat. But if you physically want to talk, put your hands up. And then we'll also have a feedback form at the end. So if you could please fill out the feedback form, it's really important to us to be able to improve on what we do, to understand what you've enjoyed and what you haven't enjoyed about the sessions. That would be great. Thank you. I'm going to hand over to Gordon. Thank you very much, Gordon.
Thank you, Kath. I've just got a couple of housekeeping details for you as well. During this presentation, I'm going to pause on 3 occasions and ask you to complete a poll. This is just so to reassure me that there is somebody awake out there. Kath will set up the polls at appropriate times. As she said, the questions I'll take at the end, if you don't mind, but please use that facility to ask your questions, and when I've finished, we can go through them. As far as I'm aware, there are no fire drills planned for today, and so if your fire alarm goes off, it means your house is probably on fire, and if I was you, I'd clear out as soon as you can. I'm just going to tell you about my experience of fundraising for a couple of different charities. I'm not an expert, but I've had many years' experience of trying to raise money. I'm going to tell you about some things that have worked really well. I'm also going to tell you about some disasters, and I hope that at the end you may find some of this interesting and maybe pick up some hints for use for your own charities. As Kath said, I recently retired. I've been a GP in Carmarthen for 35 years. And for those of you who don't know Carmarthen, it's a small rural community, about 12,000 inhabitants. And that role of being part of a community has very much helped me in my fundraising activities. I can't walk down the street in Carmarthen without being stopped repeatedly by people who know me. All GPs in Carmarthen are well known by lots of people. It's also given me a network of patients and colleagues that I can call upon. I was very lucky in that the chief reporter for the Carmarthen Journal, which is the local paper, incidentally the oldest newspaper in Wales, the chief reporter was a patient of mine, and I was therefore able to get in and get some articles and photographs about some of the activities that I was involved in. When I first came to Carmarthen, I joined Carmarthen Round Table, which in those days was very much a community service organisation, and we did quite a lot of fundraising, but almost all of it was just for local charities. In 2009, I was invited to go to Uganda with a GP from Pontypridd called Jeff Lloyd, who some of you may know. He set up this charity organisation working in the east of Uganda in a place called Mbale. Vaughan Gethin was talking about it yesterday, actually. And I went there for a couple of years, helping Jeff set up a training program for village health volunteers, and also setting up an ambulance service. After a couple of years, we managed to get some funding to replicate that activity in 3 other areas in Uganda. And I was asked to join an organisation called Care for Uganda, which is based in Neath. This is a small charity which had no healthcare projects at all. And so I was asked to set up a healthcare division and carry out the same sort of activities that Jeff and Pont were doing over in the east. And this is a photograph of the original bunch of volunteers. Some are still with us, some are sadly not. We are now 9 members, volunteers, So it's a very small organization, and that's one of the motorbike and sidecar ambulances that we have provided for them. We've now provided 8, and we continue to fund the whole service. So what I'm going to talk about is some opportunities that I've had to raise money for charity, and these might be some opportunities for you as well. As I say, there are 9 of us in Care for Uganda, all of whom work hard to raise money, and all I'm doing is telling you about some of the activities that I've been involved in. My colleagues do lots of excellent work themselves and have had other experiences, but I'm just going to tell you about what I have been doing. Well, actually, it's what my wife and I have been doing. She's the main one, as you'll find out. And I'm going to talk about 4 areas mainly. One is grants, of which I've been very fortunate and been successful in some applications, which I'll tell you about. Online shopping, this is a very easy way of raising money. Sponsored activities, such as sponsored walks and sponsored bike rides and other sort of activities that people do. And finally, I'm going to talk about some of the events that we have run. So I hope this is going to be of some interest. Let's look first at grants. And Kath is now going to open up a poll. So I'm going to ask you to fill this in just to tell us about your experiences of applying for grants. Technology prevents me from seeing anything other than the PowerPoint presentation in front of me. And so Kath will set this up, and then she's going to tell me when the results are in. She's going to read out the results, I hope.
So Gordon, yeah, the poll is up and people are voting. We can see little graph lines zipping up and down as people vote. We've had 8 people vote, so we'll just give it a couple of more minutes, see if anybody else is able to vote. Somebody has made a comment saying that they've made several applications with little success to date in the chat box.
Join the club.
Alrighty. So we have 6 votes for Welsh Government / the Wales for Africa. Sorry, the question is, which grants have you had most success with? So we've got 6 votes for the Welsh Government Wales for Africa. We've got no votes for THET or DFID. We've got 1 vote for Trust and Foundation, and we've got 4 for others. If anybody can write in the chat what the others have been, that would be very interesting to see. And some people are saying that they've had multiple, so they've had grants from more than one, but then hopefully they're voting on which one they've had the most success with.
Great. Okay.
Thanks.
I'll start with Welsh Government grants. I've been very fortunate. I've applied twice for their £15,000 grants, and have been successful on both occasions. And I'm very grateful to Welsh Government for their generosity. I can see that some of you have also been successful, and I don't know what your experience has been, but my experience is that the forms are very difficult to fill in. They take an awful lot of time. The first one I completed when I was still working full time, and at the end of it, I totted up how much time it had taken, and I worked out that it had taken me 40 hours of my time to complete the application. It's not an easy business, but the money is there. And I'll tell you a little bit later about some hints about how to be successful. that, as you all probably know, development and aid is not a devolved responsibility. The Welsh Government doesn't have funds for development sent down from the UK Government. That's all under the control of what used to be the Department for International Development, which has now been subsumed into the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. And THET is an organisation that distributes the funds apparently to all 4 nations, but I think people in Wales have had varying success with applications. It's one of the things that Wales and Africa Health Links Network is now doing, is setting up some much stronger links with THET, and hopefully this will allow greater UK funds to come to Welsh charities. I personally have only applied once to THET for money, and that was fairly recently when they announced that they had some money for the COVID crisis. I applied for £1,200, I think it was, and it was unsuccessful. Not that THET told me that I was unsuccessful or why I was unsuccessful. They just said, if you are successful, we'll be in touch. If you don't hear anything within a month, take it that you were unsuccessful. And they didn't give any feedback as to why they didn't grant it, which I thought was a bit shabby, really. Royal College of General Practitioners, they do give grants, and although I personally haven't applied for one of my colleagues who's a GP in Swansea, he has successfully applied for some money from the college. But there are out there a lot of different foundations and trusts who are available or have grants available for you to apply for. This is a website which I only discovered recently, and this is a very good source of information about different organizations or trusts, foundations that have got money. So if you are thinking about applying for money from somewhere, this is a good place to start and to see what sort of organizations and how much money they've got, because they may well be a good source for you. So my experience has been search for an appropriate source for your grants, try and match up the grant giving body with the activity that you're looking to fund. You need to complete the application meticulously. And in my experience, the Welsh Government grant application forms are very, very detailed, and you just have to go through it carefully. And if they're asking for a memorandum of understanding between you and somebody, then you have to supply it. If you don't, you'll either get the form sent back to you or you just won't get the money. So be careful when you fill the forms in and be thorough. These grant giving bodies obviously have to justify to their superiors why they're giving the money out. And they tend, in my experience, to be focused on targets and outcomes and achievements. So when you're filling in the form and they ask you what you're going to do with it, and you say, I'm going to train 90 nurses, or I'm going to train 30 doctors, or whatever it is you're going to do, try and make sure that what you claim you're going to do is something that is achievable, because they will want to know at the end of it all whether you've achieved the targets and outcomes that you've applied for. And although we all know that not everything that is measurable is important, and there are lots of important things that are not measurable, unfortunately, this is the way that these grant applications are worded. And to be honest, I can't criticize them for that, because they have to justify giving public money. The grant application normally will come with some guidelines, and it's really important that you read those carefully. As I said earlier, aid is not a devolved responsibility. And so technically, Welsh Government isn't able to use its money to purely to aid countries in Africa, for instance. You always have to put something in your grant application to show what benefit the people of Wales this grant is going to bring. So that's something that you need to bear in mind carefully, and to word your application appropriately. I've always found it a really powerful thing if you can include quotes from the people in Africa that you're helping or working with. Whether you include photographs or not, I'm not sure it makes a lot of difference, but I think it's a really powerful tool to put in quotes directly from the people who you're helping or working with. And although I'm telling you that it's difficult to complete these forms, help is available. Hub Cymru Africa have several staff members who are very skilled, and what part of their role is to help people applying for grants. I've just put up the email address. I'm sure Kath or anybody else in the organization would be able to help, or would be able to point you in the direction of people who are skilled in this. So I think that's a really important thing to bear in mind. Okay, that's all I got to say about grants. Now, online shopping. Kath, could you put up the second poll, please?
Yep, I've just put up the second two polls now, which are there. The first question is, are you familiar with Amazon Smile? And the second question is, are you familiar with easy fundraising? And so people are voting away, Gordon.
Thank you.
The lines are zipping up and down. We'll give it a couple of more minutes. So just whilst people are voting, somebody has written a comment in the chat box saying that the interesting bit of feedback from Thet that they received was that the reviewers didn't think that they could do what they said they could do for the low cost they had given, which the commenter says about the fact that they are volunteer led obviously keeps costs down, which maybe I think they're suggesting that it wasn't recognised by the funder, by the grant manager. Okay, the lines have stopped zipping now, so we can say that, are you familiar with Amazon Smile? We have 10 votes that say yes and 6 votes that say no. Are you familiar with easy fundraising? We have 4 votes for yes and 12 votes for no.
Okay, that's interesting. Amazon Smile. I don't know about you guys, but I really don't like Amazon and Jeff Bezos. I think he makes far too much money. And I don't like the fact that this is now taking over the shopping world and closing down small independent shops. But the reality is that most of us at some point will do some online shopping, and Amazon seems to be one of the easiest places to shop. Amazon Smile is a website that's side by side with Amazon, and this is all to do with Jeff Bezos giving a minute amount of money to charity. And what it means is that if you go to the Amazon Smile website and shop as normal, they will donate something like 0.5% of your total to a charity of your choice. So you have to go to Amazon Smile first, set up an account with them. By that I mean just register. And then you have to choose which charity you want them to send the money to. And once it's set up, it's there. So the next time you go shopping, go to Amazon Smile, buy whatever it is you're buying, and then a small amount of money will go to the charity that you've allocated. Easy fundraising is slightly different because Amazon Smile is just Amazon. Easy Fundraising is an organization that facilitates many, many different online shops. And it's basically the same idea. Let's say you want to go to John Lewis to buy something, or Curry's PC World. If you go via Easy Fundraising, the same thing applies. They will give a percentage of your total cost to the charity that you've arranged to set it up for. It doesn't cost you anything. You don't pay any more for the goods. You pay exactly the same amount, but the shop will send a small amount to the charity of choice. And the take-home messages. Okay, I think this is the most efficient form of fundraising because you don't have to do anything. You're probably shopping online anyway. Over the last 6 months, I know that online shopping has gone through the roof, and it doesn't cost you anything. All it needs is a little bit of effort at the beginning to set it up and to make sure that you've allocated your favorite charity to get the money. And then you just shop as normal. It is small amounts, but lots and lots of small amounts do add up. And so what I try and do is not only do it myself, but all my friends and family try to make sure that when they are shopping online, that they go through these systems, which brings a few pennies, a few pounds into the charity, but it all amounts up. One of the problems is that it's very easy to forget. If you're shopping on Amazon, it's very easy just to go to the main Amazon website rather than remembering to go to the Smile website. It's identical once you get there, but you have to go to the Smile website first, and then it'll send the donation to the charity. And again, with Easy Fundraising, if you are looking for, let's say, a garden fork or something, and you search for it and you find a shop and you buy it, the thing to do is click on the Easy Fundraising icon, which will be on your screen first, and then search for the retailer that you're looking for. So it does take a little bit of concentration, and it takes memory, and my age, that's not easy. And not only do you have to remind yourself, you have to remind your friends repeatedly. What I've done is write a Word document setting out in very simple terms how to set it up, and then every now and again I'll send this document around all my friends saying, I hope you remembered to use Easy Fundraising to support my charity. Of course, there's no guarantee that they will support my charity. Maybe they'll be supporting some other charity, but hey, I don't mind about that. Okay. So let's talk about sponsored activities. And I don't know about you guys, but I find it really strange. Kath, can we do the third poll? Hi, Kath, are you still there? I can't hear anything. I'm presuming that you could still hear me. Hilary, if you're watching this and things are not working, can you just let me know? Okay, thanks very much. Okay. Okay. Can you shut the door, love? Sorry about this. So the poll that Catherine's going to set up for you is asking you about what your experiences have been about sponsored activities, but never mind. I've done many, and I've come to the conclusion that the more difficult or dangerous the activity, the more sponsorship you get. Now, I find this bizarre. I find it totally illogical. If a friend of mine is working with a charity, a good cause, and persuades me that I should support what she's doing, why do I need her to undertake something that's probably arduous, that's uncomfortable, and hopefully difficult or dangerous before I will donate some money towards her good cause? Now, I find that really strange and really illogical, but I also have to admit that I'm subject to the same weakness myself. If a friend of mine who was going to do a sponsored walk of 3 miles along the prom in Aberystwyth, let's say, to raise money for her good cause, I'd probably chuck a few quid in. If she was walking barefoot across the Andes in the middle of winter for a cat's home, I'd probably donate a lot more, despite the fact that I hate cats. And I still can't understand the logic of why you have to put yourself through something unpleasant to persuade people to donate money. Anyway, in my experience, that's a fact of life. And I'll tell you now about some of the sponsored things I've done. I've never done a sponsored shave or anything like that, but I have done a number of different activities, mainly cycling, to be honest. In 1994, when I was in Round Table, I organised a relay cycle around the periphery of Wales, which is about 700 miles, a lot more than I expected it to be. But a bunch of us went on this together. You would cycle furiously for about 20 minutes, then get off the bike, get in the van, somebody else would get on the bike, repeat 20 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes, and you went into the van and tried to get some sleep. And we did the whole periphery of Wales within 48 hours. Now, that was really not a lot. Well, it was a lot of fun, but it was quite hard. A couple of years later, I organised a cycle ride from Carmarthen up to Holyhead, over to Dublin, down to Rosslare, back on the ferry to Fishguard and back to Carmarthen. These were both whilst I was in Round Table, and we were raising money for the Anthony Nolan bone marrow appeal. I don't know if you're familiar with this charity. But it was a lot of fun, and we raised quite a lot of money. In 2002, I think it was, the receptionist in my surgery persuaded me that I should abseil down the tax office to raise money for guide dogs for the blind, I think. And now I'm going to tell you about three of my my major sponsored events. In 2011, I had a month off work, and Hillary, my wife, didn't have the time off, so I decided I wanted to do something that she wouldn't have wanted to do. I did consider walking to base camp in Everest, but then I decided I'd cycle to Barcelona instead and do it as a sponsored event, which is very successful. 3 years later, I got on a train to Paris and then cycled to Avignon. And 3 years after that, I just retired, and so I had some time. So I took a train to Lille and then cycled from there to Santander over 6 weeks. And I'm now going to show you the routes I took. This is 2011, Carmarthen to Barcelona. And what an amazing coincidence. I was mapping my ride using a Garmin GPS gadget on my bike, and it was all in miles. And at the end of it, I totted up the total number of miles. And I thought, I wonder how many kilometers that was. Pressed the conversion, and it was exactly 2,011 kilometers in 2011. Amazing. Anyway, you can see my route there. And to go back to my statement at the beginning, in that the more difficult or dangerous your activity, the more you're going to get, I decided to do this on my own without any support. I had all my worldly belongings in panniers on the bike, which made it rather heavy. And I took a route that included going over the Pyrenees. Now, I don't know if any of you follow the Tour de France or have any interest in it, but one of the major climbs in the Tour de France is a thing called the Col du Tourmalet, which is a monster mountain in the Pyrenees. And in fact, that was the first of the big mountains that I climbed over down to Barcelona. This raised £16,000, which I was astonished about. As I say, 3 years later, I took a train to Paris and cycled to Avignon. And this was only 800 kilometers, but I only had a week in which to do it. And the penultimate day, I climbed Mont Ventoux, which is another of these horrendous climbs on the Tour de France. And that raised £8,000. And then in 2014, as I say, I had 6 weeks on my own, cycling from Lille through 6 different nations, including Switzerland. And if any of you are thinking of taking up cycling, I wouldn't advise Switzerland as a great place. I'd stick to Holland or somewhere like that, really, because there are a lot of hills and mountains in Switzerland. Although it was good training, because when I got to France, I cycled up the Alpe d'Huez with the famous 21 hairpin bends. And that again raised another £8,000. So, sponsored activities. What sort of hints would I have to anybody who's thinking of doing it? Sponsorship forms. The first few activities I did, I had paper sponsorship forms and was asking people to sponsor me so much a mile or so much. If you do this, I'd advise you to keep several copies active at any one time. The first person you want at the top of that list is someone who's generous, because if they put 20 quid on it, the next person is unlikely to put £3. People tend to follow the donation of the person who's just been before them. But that doesn't always work. But as soon as someone puts a small amount on, file that piece of paper and get out another active one and try and embarrass people to give you as much as possible. Collect the cash before the event. In fact, collect the cash when they promise. The first one I did, or the first couple of ones I did around Wales and up to Dublin and back, I got them to promise the sponsorship, and then I had to go back to them asking them to pay up. And that was a lot more difficult than the cycle ride, I can tell you. I got every penny in the end, and I was dogged, and it was a complete pain in the ass to people. But I thought, this is not my money I'm talking about. It's money they promised to the charity. So I'm not going to let them off the hook. But it really did take a lot of work and effort. So what I've done recently is use an online system. There are several. Just Giving is one, Virgin Money Giving is another. And if you're thinking of doing this, have a look at several. Some of them will require you to make a one-off payment to set up the website for you. It's usually in the region of about £100, I think. But then everything that's donated goes to the charity. Other ones don't charge a setup fee, but they will take 1 or 2% of all the donations as an administration fee. And I guess you just have to decide how much you're likely to make as to which one will be the most effective. But believe me, it's much easier to do this than to go walking around with a clipboard and a piece of paper. On those last 3 long cycle rides I did, I wrote a blog every day. And I think this was very helpful, because I had lots of people who were following my blog every day. And every now and again, you could put something in to say, oh, I've just noticed that John Phillips has donated £100 today. Thank you very much for being so generous. And it gives the message, again, to people that they need to cough up. It's also fairly reassuring that all your supporters know you're still alive. And the other thing about sponsored activities is there is a quid pro quo. Lots of people who sponsored me on my events have subsequently come back to me saying they are doing a sponsored activity, and I feel morally bound to support them and to sponsor them. So it's not a cheap option. Okay. And now this is the last thing I'm going to talk about is fundraising events. And I have done lots of these over the years, and I'll tell you about some of them now. Most of them, actually, it's been my wife, Hilary, who's been the driving force. She's the one who has the ideas and the drive, and I just end up being the front man. And she's the one who does the work, and she's the one who raises the money. So thank you, Hilary. Some of them have been very successful, some are not. Bag packing in Marks and Spencer's. This is a relatively easy thing to do. Hilary contacted a local school and spoke to them in the school assembly, I think, about the work we do. They were very happy to help. And at Christmas time, she had a slot where the school children would pack people's shopping and get donations. If you're thinking of doing this, you have to book early, months in advance, if you want to have a good date to do this around Christmas time. She was almost arrested by the anti-terrorist branch because she took some photographs of the kids inside Marks and Spencer's, and they're very, very sensitive, apparently, to having photographs taken inside the store because they're so worried about Palestinian terrorists bombing them. Again, in the school, most secondary schools will have occasional own clothes day where the kids pay £1 to a charity for the privilege of coming in their own school, their own clothes, rather than wearing the school uniform. This is Money for All group. We asked some of the school children to put on a concert in a local football club. This had, a couple of benefits in that it raised the awareness of the work that we were doing. The football club were happy because they had their bar open. A lot of the events that we do actually are primarily to raise money, but the other really important thing is that it raises awareness in the community. As I say, my wife is also a GP in the same practice in Carmarthen, so we naturally had a fairly high profile in the community, and it really does help to get publicity and to raise awareness. And so by doing things in various different venues, that will help get the message across to people. We held a quiz night in a local cricket club. Again, the same thing. It doesn't take an awful lot of organisation or effort, but it raises awareness. It brings some money in. The difficult thing, of course, is always trying to get people to attend. Chinese meal. There's a Chinese restaurant in Carmarthen. The owner was a patient of mine, and I said, Mr. Ma, can you put on a meal for us for 10 quid? I charged everyone who came 15, and so we made some money that way. Mr. Ma then said, oh, well, I have to charge 5 pence for every plastic bag from my takeaway service, which I'm supposed to give to charity, so I will give that to your charity. So that brought in some more money. There's a catering college in Carmarthen, and the students are very keen to have an organised dinner. So we set up a dinner there. Again, very simple. They provide the food, and we take a cut of the cost. So that worked very well. There's a local choir in Carmarthen that we're friendly with, and they came to sing outside Morrison's around the Christmas time, singing carols. That raised quite a lot of money. Speaking events, I and Hilary have spoken at all of these organisations in Carmarthen, including the Peniel Ladies Club and the Cumfrwd Pensioners Club. This isn't very much in the way of a fundraising event. It's more to do with raising awareness. But you will, if you get asked, you will find that on occasions when you leave, they'll give you a check for 100 quid or 150 quid. And this is more to do with raising awareness. Everybody in this area knows that Hilary and I work in Uganda and the sort of work that we do. And what you'll find is that if you are asked to speak in, say, the Rotary Club, before long, somebody in Lions will be on the phone saying, oh, can you come and talk to us? And then Round Table will be on the phone, because all these organisations scratching their heads to try and find someone to come and speak to them. And it's quite fun. It's not too onerous. And once you've done it once or twice, then you'll find it's easier. Okay, now for some bigger events that we've organised. Some time ago, my wife said, oh, why don't we invite some people around for Sunday lunch and charge them, and this will raise money for Care for Uganda. And I thought, oh, yeah, that sounds like a reasonable idea. What were you thinking of, 10 or 12? Oh, no, she said 60. So on a Sunday, we had 60 people come to our house. She cooked lunch for them. I think it was something like cottage pie that they could eat standing up with a fork. I was persuaded to raid my wine cellar and sell them some wine. So that raised a few bob. Emboldened by this, Hilary then decided that she wanted to do a lunch in the town hall in Carmarthen, in St. Peter's Hall. And she got a few of her friends along, and they cooked salads and some hot food as well, I think. Threw open the doors, and anybody who was in town could come in, and for 10 quid or something, they had their lunch. I think about 200 people came through. It was an enormous amount of work. There was quite a lot of waste at the end because we had to buy quite a lot of food in because you weren't sure how many people were going to come. And in the end, I think we decided we'd never do that again. So if you or somebody suggests that this is a good idea, I'd say probably not. We then had the idea of a book exchange, which was a complete disaster. Again, we took over the town hall in Carmarthen, and the idea was that we charge £1 entry fee, and you could come in, pick up a book that you wanted, and leave one behind that you didn't want. Of course, we thought, right, we're going to have to get a good number of books to start off with, and so the Carmarthen Journal kindly put a little article in the paper, and we put notices up in the surgery. And before long, I had hundreds and hundreds of books in my garage. So I had to go through them all, trying to put them into different genres or topics, non-fiction, fiction, travel, all this stuff. We set them all up in trestle tables in the town hall. People came in, paid their £1. Most of them brought 7 or 8 books and took away 1. At the end of it all, we had 3,000 books left that nobody wanted, which filled my garage for weeks on end, until we finally managed to find some company outside Swansea, I think, that came and bought them for 3p a ton and took them off. And I think they were pulped in the end. So that was a complete disaster. So don't ever be tempted to do something like that. Now a success story. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Angel Hotel in Abergavenny. It's a fabulous hotel, and the owner has been very supportive to any events that I've done in the past. And he readily agreed to put on a dinner for me. You may be familiar with a chap called Wyre Davies, who was a BBC journalist. He, for many years, was a Middle East correspondent working with Jeremy Bowen. He then went to be South America editor based in Rio during the Olympics. He happens to be a cousin of mine, and so I persuaded him to come and speak at a dinner in the Angel. The Angel provided the food, reduced cost to me. They donated quite a lot of wine. I charged £50 a head and sold 100 tickets, and it was a great success. I think we made something in excess of £4,000 for that one night's dinner. Wine tasting. I'm also a trustee of the local community association charity in the village that I live, and we years ago bought the old school, which was no longer used, and that's now been converted into a community centre where there are activities going on all the time. And 21 years ago, Hilary and I decided, well, we'll do a fundraising event. We'll do a wine tasting evening where people get 4 white wines and 4 red wines to taste. Hilary provides homemade bread and cheeses and meats and salads, and a a friend of mine who's a wine merchant comes along and does the tasting notes for each of the wines. The first couple of years we did it, we had to advertise and phone and try and persuade people to come. But for the last 10 years or more, people are ringing us up and saying, when is the next event? We want to come. And this is one of my serious take-home messages for you, is that if you are putting an event on, you must give value for money. You must make sure that when people go home, they say, that was a really good evening. I feel good because I've supported a charity, but I've also had really good value for money. If they don't feel that, they may come along once to an event you're organizing and they may make a donation and they may feel quite good about it. But if they didn't enjoy it and if they didn't feel they had value for money, then they may well not come back again. So I think this is really important. The wine tasting event is great fun. It's a small school and it's comfortable when we've got about 60 to 65 people in, but we have had up to 90 people in there. And they're uproarious evenings. We usually make £1,000 every time we do one of these. One of the ways we make money is through the raffle, and I want to talk briefly about raffles and auctions. I think there are two ways of running a raffle. In the wine tasting, what we do is we sell raffle tickets, normal cloakroom ticket types, and we sell them £5 a strip. You can't buy one or two, you have to buy 5 minimum. We don't sell them until after they've tasted at least 6 wines, because they are more generous then. And I try and arrange for an attractive young lady to go around selling the tickets, and I think that helps as well. The other way of doing it was what we did in the Angel Hotel for the dinner, in that we had some very nice raffle prizes. And of course, you must have some decent prizes for your raffle. There's no point just putting on bottles of sherry and an odd box of chocolates. You have to try and find something decent. We have a number of supporters. There are a couple of butchers in Carmarthen who regularly give us a voucher for £20 worth of meat. There's a solicitor that always gives a prize of a family will, which is worth several £100s. So to go back to what I was saying, in the Angel, we didn't sell raffle tickets. We put an envelope on everybody's plate and said, this is your raffle ticket. Put your name on the front and put a donation inside, and we'll pull the prizes at the end. And whether people put £5 in or £100 in, that was one ticket they had. And there were several people who put £100 in the envelope. And I think we raised far more money by doing that than if we'd gone around selling raffle tickets. Auctions can work as well, as long as you've got something to auction that people will want. And it works particularly well if you've got at least 2 people in the audience, preferably fairly competitive people, businessmen. And if they're rivals, then you're doing really well, because they will want to show off and outbid the other. That always works. On 2 occasions, we've brought our Ugandan staff over to the UK, and we've arranged a coffee morning, actually in the same old school in Capeldewi. And we've pitched these not as fundraising activities, but as thank yous to our supporters. And we don't charge an entry fee. Come in, we provide teas, coffees, and Welsh cakes, and they enjoy the event. And it's meant as a thank you to them for all the support over the years. Well, the first time we did it, I said, right, this is not going to be a fundraising, and I made it very clear. But at the end, someone who I didn't know particularly well came up to me, pulled out his checkbook, and wrote a check for £25,000. So it is worth doing. So this is coming to the end. I'm sure you're glad to know. And what have I found? What have I discovered? Well, I think people want to give. There is a genuine desire out there for people to give, and often to give repeatedly. The charities have had a bad press over recent years. Things like the Oxfam fiasco in Haiti, and stories about big charities where for every pound you donate, they spend about 60p on administration. I don't think Brexit helped. I think that helped the Charity Begins at Home brigade, and who don't want to donate to Africa. But I have found that by stressing to the community that everything they give to us is spent in Uganda, I think that's helped enormously. We're an organization where everybody pays their own ways. Nothing from the donations goes to pay for our travel, for our accommodation, for any of our expenses. We have to bear that cost ourselves. And I think people respond to that. They respect the fact that we're doing this, and they trust us. And I was saying earlier on about grants, how the grant givers are focused on outcomes and targets and things, which I think is quite understandable. The advantage of smaller events and speaking from the heart to people in your community is that they're not interested in that, really. They will trust you to spend the money properly and efficiently and effectively, and that's all they want to know. But there is a genuine desire out there for people to give. And I think what we are doing is just facilitating that for them. They're looking for something they can trust to donate. And if we can provide that vehicle for them, then we're doing them a service as well. You must tell them what you do. I've been doing it by speaking to all these organizations. We have a website, which is dreadful. We don't use social media. As you can see from that photograph, most of us are retired and wouldn't know a Twitter feed if we tripped over one. But I'm sure that that's the way forward. And I would encourage you to look into improving your websites and using social media. Tell people why you need the money. Tell them what you do and why you need more money and what you're going to do with it. It's really important to thank these people, keep them informed. We have a system whereby people could sponsor one of our ambulances or pay for the fuel for one of them. And we try always to report back about the activity of that ambulance in particular. And as I said before, I think it's really important that you give people value for money. I hope that's been of some interest. I hope that I've given you a flavour of what my experiences have been, and maybe I hope you will pick up some good hits.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Gordon. Diolch. Can you hear me?
I can hear you and I can see you.
Good. I'm so sorry about that. My internet dropped, but people were replying to the poll and they were engaged. So just sorry I couldn't tell you about the results. So we've had a couple of questions that have come in whilst you've been talking. Would you like to hear them?
Yes, of course. Please do.
So the first question is from Catherine Thomas, and she asks, do you use any local media in any way?
Well, the only local media that I've used has been the Carmarthen Journal, and it's been a great help. As I said, I know this chief reporter very well, and he's been really helpful, and I think that's made a big difference.
Would you have any tips for anybody who maybe doesn't know the chief reporter? Would you have anything that
um,
you've learned over the years that you would recommend?
yeah, I mean, you have to know the newspaper, you have to know what sort of things they print, and you have to think about what they would like to support. They like photographs, but just Radio Wales. Sorry, my thank you, Hilary. I did go on to Radio Wales on the what was it, Roy Noble programme. I was interviewed on Radio Wales before my cycle ride to Barcelona. And in fact, I then went on Radio Cymru afterwards. And at one point on the cycle ride, they phoned me up and I spoke on Radio Cymru live from somewhere in the middle of France.
Excellent, excellent, lovely. And also, by the way, congratulations on £25,000 from one donation. That's incredible. That's a fundraiser's win.
Well, there's nothing to do with me.
We have another question also from Catherine, and she was saying, lots of hard work to do all this. Does it take away time that you could put into the partnership working?
No, I don't think it does. Maybe I should have stressed more the fun that we've had in these fundraising events. The wine tasting is brilliant, and I really enjoy that. But I've had lots of fun with lots of the other things as well. The angel dinner in particular was really good fun, and I don't think I would be doing that in time that I would normally be helping Catherine.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that's come out to me from listening to you talk is the importance of networking and the importance of following up with people, staying in contact with people, telling people how their money was spent, what the benefit was of that, and just keeping them in the loop and keeping them engaged, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That is so important. They must know what it is you're doing and why you want that money. And you must say thank you to them at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we have another question from Mark Vaughan, and he is saying, this is the sort of thing that we've been doing with success. What now with coronavirus limitations? So have you shifted at all with your approach?
Well, absolutely. I know Mark very well, and he works very hard in a different charity in Uganda. And yes, Mark, it's really difficult. We can't run a wine tasting event this year. It's put a hold on virtually all of our fundraising activities, other than, of course, the online shopping. And to be honest, I haven't really thought about how I could put on an event that doesn't involve people getting together.
Yeah, I think there
If you've
are.
got any ideas, let me know.
Well, and I would always say with that is always look at the bigger charities. Always look at what are Macmillan doing to change their approach. They're not doing their coffee morning. There lots of things are now doing about steps, and people are engaged with that, looking at how can they get their steps in and fundraising that way. So there are. I would always look at, okay, what are big charities doing? So I can't have a wine tasting. Maybe we can do a virtual wine tasting. My family and I are doing a virtual wine tasting for somebody's birthday. So, it is possible. There
Yeah,
are,
I can see Paul Myers has said an online auction via Zoom. Yeah, sure, that would be possible, but you'd have to get a prize or that people want to buy. But that could work. That would be a good idea. Yeah, Catherine, I see that you've said, Gordon, you are unreconstructed. Well, that's not strictly true because I am reconstructed. As you know, I've just had 2 new hips fitted, so I'm not sure you're entirely true there. which means I'm not going to be cycling very far for a bit.
Alrighty. Do we have any more questions? I can see there's one there. Is that a... Oh, what about sponsorship? CLJ. Did you write
What
that
about
question, Will?
sponsorship? Yeah, I did mention that. That's Chris John, who is a member of our team. Yes, we do have sponsorship. I mentioned it right at the end. Maybe he'd asked that beforehand, but we now do have a facility where you can sponsor a village health team or sponsor a motorbike ambulance or the driver or the fuel. And that's, I think, successful. It's only recently we started doing that, and it's taking off slowly, but I think that will be a good form of fundraising. Yeah.
Okay. There are no other questions that are coming in at the moment,
Okay.
Gordon.
And I think we've run over our time, haven't we?
We're just on 10 past, so there's just time enough to say thank you very much for giving us your time and for sharing your experiences with us. I've found it really interesting. I'm sure everybody else has. Um, I'm putting in the chat again the links for the feedback forms, and
Okay.
particularly if this isn't your first webinar, you might be bored of giving your feedback forms, but it really does help us improve. So please do let us know. Please do fill out the forms and let us know how we're doing and what we can improve on. And Gordon, thank you. Really appreciate you giving your time.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, good. All right, thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone. Oh, and Peter has put up the the summary of what's happening. I think that's today's. But there are more events happening tomorrow if anybody wants to have a look at the Hub Come Africa website. Thank you.
Tomorrow.